On this Wednesday night, tightening the purse strings, what the Prime Minister is promising.
We need to rein in spending.
Why he believes it'll pay off in the long run, and what he's looking to invest in. The Conservative leader says the temporary foreign workers program needs to be axed, why businesses say that is a bad idea. The message behind China's largest ever military parade. And the show of support from Russia and North Korea. Plus, one daughter's discovery about her mother's past as a Nazi slave.
This is the most important letter.
And the father she never met.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There is still no deal on trade with the U.S., but Canada's Prime Minister revealed today he and President Trump have been talking by phone. Mark Carney called it a good conversation, but seemed to lower expectations about the outcome.
I last spoke to the President Monday evening. We spoke at length on a wide range of issues, including on trade, but geopolitical other issues. Don't expect immediate white smoke on one of these strategic sectors, but that's the type of conversation that we're having.
Carney, who is holding 2 days of meetings with his cabinet, also hinted at what is coming in his government's first federal budget this fall. Carney is looking to cut costs. Our chief political correspondent, David Akin, is in Toronto. David.
The question first came in French, Donna. Is Prime Minister Mark Carney going to release an austerity budget? The answer, also in French, yes.
C'est un budget d'austérité et d'investissement.
It will be a budget of austerity and investment, Carney said. Investments in defense to spur home building and create the conditions for major projects to be developed. But make no mistake, Carney wants government to be smaller.
The federal government has been growing spending as a whole at over 7% a year on average for over a decade. That's twice the rate of growth of the economy on average. It's not a sustainable situation. So we need to rein in spending.
In Carney's view, a government that is more efficient can be a government that has the fiscal room for big projects.
In finding those efficiencies, we create the room for these big investments.
But what to build? The Carney government has spent its first months in office asking premiers, Indigenous leaders, and industry which projects would be best. But the Prime Minister's office also polled Canadians on the issue. And those internal government polls obtained by Global News through an access to information request show strongest support for hydroelectric projects. 88% of the 2,000 people surveyed by government pollsters in late June said they somewhat or strongly support new hydroelectric projects. 82% love highway upgrades. Carney is days away from releasing this list of major projects, and that internal government polling may well guide what is on that list. Now, Carney has said that he wants to build. He doesn't want to engage in long, drawn-out political battles. And so, hydroelectric projects, highway system upgrades, and ports may be the path of least resistance, and that just might be the path that the Carney government chooses to take. Donna.
Okay, David Akin in Toronto, thank you. The federal Conservative leader is calling on the federal government to scrap a program that's existed for decades to help fill specific jobs when there are labor shortages. The temporary foreign workers program allows foreign nationals to come to Canada for limited periods. Touria Izri explains why Poilievre thinks it's time to shut it down and why some business leaders say his thinking is oversimplified.
It's a long-running program the Conservatives want cut.
The principle is very simple. Canadian jobs for Canadian workers.
Pierre Poilievre is calling for an end to the use of temporary foreign workers and calling out some of Canada's most well-known chains, accusing the federal government of allowing them to flood the market with cheap labor.
The Liberals have to answer. Why is it that they're shutting our own youth out of jobs and replacing them with low-wage temporary foreign workers from poor countries who are ultimately being exploited?
The program expanded under the Trudeau government and surged post-pandemic as Ottawa tried to fill labor shortages.
It just went on for far too long. And now it's bumping up against the slowdown of the labor market. Youth unemployment is very high.
In July, it reached its highest level in 15 years. The Conservatives want to keep the immigration stream for agricultural workers, but phase out the temporary foreign worker program in 5 years. Poilievre says the Liberals promised to cap permits to 82,000 this year, but that they've already handed out 105,000. The Immigration Department calls that statement inaccurate and incomplete and says that the number the Conservatives cite includes permit extensions for people already here.
That program has a role. It has to be focused in terms of its role. And it's part of what we're reviewing.
The unemployed auto worker that is used to making $100,000 a year is just not moving to rural BC to take a job cleaning hotel rooms.
A heated debate in the face of a difficult job market. Touria Izri, Global News, Montreal.
In Portugal, at least 15 people are dead after Lisbon's world-famous funicular derailed and crashed into a building. Emergency crews rushed to the scene of the mangled cable car. Witnesses say it sped down the hill at high speed. The railway, which opened in the 19th century, winds its way up and down Lisbon's hilly streets and is popular with tourists. Authorities say some foreign nationals are among the dead. At least 18 other people are injured. Lisbon's mayor calls it a tragic accident and says the city will observe 3 days of mourning. China put its military might on full display today, holding a large military parade to mark 80 years since Japan formally surrendered, ending the Second World War. But this was about much more than remembering the past. The Chinese President Xi Jinping invited 2 of his nuclear-armed neighbors to be there. Redmond Shannon reports on how China is flexing its military muscle and the message it's sending to the world.
A variety of intercontinental ballistic missiles, some that need 3 trucks just to carry them. China showing off its military hardware, including lasers, underwater drones, and even so-called robot wolves. A military that one day aims to match the might of the United States.
So there's a lot of areas where they are close, there's areas where there are peers, and there's areas where they are ahead.
Chinese President Xi Jinping centers stage for a parade marking the Second World War victory over Japan. He told the crowds the tragedies of history must not be repeated and that China is committed to peace, while admiring the ever-growing arsenal and stating that China's great rejuvenation is unstoppable. A parade of visiting world leaders too, most prominently the allies flanking Xi, Russia's Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un.
They will kind of take note of the fact that of this partnership, China is definitely the first among equals.
Professor Kerry Brown notes that the parade is propaganda for a domestic audience in a slowing economy, but it also sends a message to China's adversaries.
I understood the reason they were doing it, and they were hoping I was watching, and I was watching.
We have differences with China, different approaches to a variety of things, but they are our second largest trading partner.
Xi has said no one can stop China reunifying with democratic Taiwan. The island still has a strategically ambiguous promise of protection from the United States, at least for now. Donna?
Redmond Shannon in London. Thanks, Red. China's military parade reveals how advanced the country's defense industrial complex has become. It has the resources and the labor to build military capability faster than other countries, and it doesn't need public approval to spend money on defense. For example, in the last 2 decades, China's government has ramped up investment in shipbuilding. More than half the world's ships are now being built there. The Chinese Navy is now the world's largest maritime force, though America still has larger ships with more advanced technology, such as its nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, and the U.S. Navy still maintains superiority through its global presence. But this military parade is a warning China intends to challenge that. Donald Trump was looking to Europe today, hosting the president of Poland at the White House. He says their relationship is stronger than ever and that the U.S. could step up its military presence in Poland. As Jackson Prosco reports, the meeting is happening as Russia's war on Ukraine is ranging dangerously close to Poland's border.
Another day, another deadly assault on Ukraine, as Russia fired more than 500 drones and missiles, some flying so close to the Polish border that NATO fighter jets were scrambled into action. Under a more peaceful flyover in Washington, Poland's president was welcomed to the White House, where Donald Trump expressed more frustration with Russian President Vladimir Putin and his unending war.
I have no message to President Putin. He knows where I stand, and he'll make a decision one way or the other.
If Putin is ready to stop the fighting, he's shown no signs so far. Trump's 50-day deadline for a Russian ceasefire passed. So did Trump's promised 2-week timeline for a meeting between Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, which came after Trump met Putin in Alaska. If Zelensky is ready, let him come to Moscow, said Putin, knowing full well a meeting on Russian soil is unacceptable to Ukraine and its allies.
I don't think Putin can be trusted. He could stop the war today if he wanted to.
Trump seems increasingly tired of suggestions he hasn't done enough to pressure Russia, pointing to the secondary sanctions the U.S. leveled on India for its continued purchase of Russian oil.
You call that no action? And I haven't done phase 2 yet or phase 3. But when you say there's no action, I think you ought to get yourself a new job.
So far, Russia, the aggressor, has not faced any direct consequences for failing to meet Trump's deadlines. All the while, Ukraine waits for a lasting peace that's still out of reach. Trump plans to speak to Zelensky and leaders of the so-called Coalition of the Willing on Thursday, where security guarantees for Ukraine will be discussed. Those only come into play if Russia agrees to a ceasefire, which it has shown no sign of doing so far. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
A U.S. federal judge is ordering the Trump administration to restore $2.2 billion in grants to Harvard University. She ruled the freeze was illegal. The Trump administration froze the grants after Harvard refused Trump's demand to end its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and screen international students for ideological biases. A federal court hearing in Texas today. Families of Boeing 737 MAX crash victims urged a judge to reject a deal that would spare the company from criminal prosecution.
My daughter died on a new airplane that was defective and that was in operation because they weren't complying with regulations and because of fraud. And I don't want any other parent and any other family member to lose their loved ones because of this kind of fraud and impunity of a huge corporation.
Families of some of those killed in the crashes of 2 737 MAX planes held photos of their dead loved ones outside court. Inside, a judge heard arguments on the U.S. government's motion to dismiss its criminal case against Boeing. 346 people were killed when the 2 Boeing planes crashed in 2018 and 2019. Florida is set to become the first state to scrap all vaccine mandates, including for children. Florida's Surgeon General says every last one of the vaccine mandates is wrong and drips with what he calls disdain and slavery.
We need to end it. It's the right thing to do. And it'll be wonderful for Florida to be the first state to do it.
He says the government has no right to tell citizens what to put in their bodies. Public health experts say vaccines are safe and essential for saving lives and limiting the spread of disease. Wildfires rage in the Northwest Territories. Coming up, what could fuel the flames and the air quality concerns on the prairies. Fire crews are working to hold the line on a wildfire burning less than a kilometer from Fort Providence in the Northwest Territories. About 600 people have been forced from their homes and strong winds are fanning those flames. Heather Yurix West reports on the late season wildfire surge and the smoke it is sending south.
It's a late summer sun shrouded with smoke.
Last couple of days was very surprising that we have all this.
It's kind of depressing. We were expecting to be a lively day.
With poor air quality blanketing much of Alberta for the second day in a row, September is off to a gloomy start, all thanks to a series of wildfires in the Northwest Territories.
We're getting a big late season push driven by a big passing cold front that came with no rain, extreme winds that caused a lot of problems for us the other day.
A wildfire less than a kilometer away from the community of Fort Providence forced its evacuation on Sunday, sending 600 residents to seek shelter in Hay River, where the fear of a wildfire emergency is known all too well.
It's a great opportunity for us to say thanks to our neighbors because, as you said, we've had a few evacuations in the last few years, 3 to be exact, and Providence has always stepped up to help.
Crews spent Tuesday strengthening a fire guard ahead of strong winds Wednesday.
And that work was successful. We were able to burn off vegetation in the fire's path, meet the head of that wildfire with our ignition operation, and our work to mop up that ignition line today will continue.
Though the smoke from those fires will remain over much of the prairies for a few more days.
We are going to see some significant improvement in terms of the air quality as we look ahead to the weekend for places like Calgary, Saskatoon, Regina, Winnipeg that have been fairly hit hard recently.
Smoky days like this in Calgary this summer have actually been pretty rare. In fact, not since 2016 have southern Alberta skies been so clear. This stretch of poor air quality going to show that Canada's wildfire season is not over yet. Donna?
All right, Heather Yurix West in Calgary, thanks. Compiling names ahead, some Jeffrey Epstein survivors say they're prepared to release a list of his known associates. Several women who say they were sex trafficked by convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein say if the U.S. government isn't going to reveal a list of his known associates, they will do it themselves. They made the threat on Capitol Hill, putting more pressure on lawmakers and the White House to release all the Epstein files. As Mike Armstrong reports, it was the first time some of the women have gone public with what they endured.
I was only 14 years old when I met Jeffrey.
They are stories that were hard to hear and painful to tell.
The abuse began. He told me to keep it secret.
Victims of Jeffrey Epstein stepped forward, one after another, to describe how they were caught in the web he wove and the nightmare each lived through.
We are not asking for pity. We are here demanding accountability, and I'm demanding justice.
The press conference on Capitol Hill was to pressure lawmakers to force a vote that would require the Justice Department to turn over all files related to the Epstein case. That push is supported by Democrats in the House, but only 4 Republicans. They need 2 more.
I hope my colleagues are watching this press conference. I want them to think, what if this was your sister? What if this was your daughter?
For years, Epstein and his confidant and recruiter Ghislaine Maxwell preyed on underage girls, both abusing them themselves and sending them out to others. The government did release more than 30,000 pages of documents related to the case this week, but critics say most were public already and too much is redacted. Epstein was arrested in July of 2019 on sex trafficking charges, but just a month later, he was found dead in his New York jail cell, a suicide that sent conspiracy theories spiraling. Now, what has kept the whole thing in the news is Epstein's relationship in the early 2000s with Donald Trump. The president continues to insist his opponents are keeping the story alive.
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends.
There is no hoax. The abuse was real.
The survivors are also frustrated by talk of a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell and that she was recently moved to a more comfortable, low-security prison.
None of us were consulted.
Now, whether Epstein had a formal client list or not, the survivors say they know powerful people who were involved and have never been prosecuted. They say the next step may be to put a list together themselves. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Next, one woman's quest to unlock lifelong mysteries about her parents. Felix Auger-Aliassime is on a roll at the U.S. Open. Canada's top-ranked tennis player beat Australia's Alex de Minaur in a 4-hour match to reach the semi-finals. He'll compete for a spot in the final on Friday. Well, journalists spend their careers documenting the stories of other people and events around them. For a retired broadcaster in Nova Scotia, the biggest story has turned out to be the mystery of her own upbringing and what happened to her mother during the Second World War. Heidi Petracek explains.
The most important letter, I think, it's my grandmother's confession.
In 1943, Helena St. James' Ukrainian grandmother wrote of great remorse.
She signs off, you're bad, mama.
For sending her daughter to high school the day Nazis arrived and kidnapped students to work for the regime.
Very few people know about the slave workers of Germany.
Neither did St. James, until she found bundles of her mother's old letters after Maria died in 2018. Millions of civilians from German-occupied territories were forced to work for the Third Reich in the Second World War. After spending decades as a journalist, it's no wonder St. James was compelled to retrace her mother's steps overseas to learn more, uncovering just what she went through.
She was a factory worker. She had to make ball bearings. When it was bombed, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, the slave workers, they had to dig with their hands little, indentations in the earth where they lay cowering.
She was digging into stuff and writing about stuff that she never talked about, and certainly that her mother never talked about. And I think that took a lot of courage.
This is the picture that I grew up with.
Determination led St. James to also uncover details about the biggest mystery of her life, the identity of the birth father she never knew, her research leading to family in Poland and this photo.
And for the first time, I saw my father's face.
Stanislaw Zabrowski had been a prisoner of the Nazis and met her mother in a camp for displaced persons at the end of the war. They moved to Canada, but split up when St. James was 4. Never having seen his daughter again, Zabrowski died in Northern Ontario at 64. St. James found and visited his grave. It's all now in a book she wrote called The Golden Daughter.
My story is a story amongst all the other stories, and I hope it resonates.
A story not just about her past, she says, but a reminder of the generational trauma of war and just how tenuous freedom can be. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Tantallon, Nova Scotia.
And that is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Air Canada showcases Pitt Meadows, BC, Point O'Barrel, Ontario, and East Baltic, Prince Edward Island. Thanks for watching and hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.